My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 31 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of how my family erased me from their lives and what happened when I came back to save them anyway. It was December 18th. I was 20 years old. I had just finished my final exams at the University of Michigan. I was exhausted. I hadn't slept in 3 days, but I was happy. I was going home. I was going to see my family. I was going to sleep in my own bed. I was going to eat my mother's cooking. I was going to feel safe. I took the Greyhound bus from Ann Arbor to Detroit. It was a 4-hour ride. I spent most of it looking out the window, watching the snow fall, thinking about how good it would be to be home. I walked the 3 blocks from the bus station to my parents' house. The house was a small bungalow on Maple Street. I had lived there my whole life. My bedroom was in the back, next to the kitchen. It was small, but it was mine. I had called my mother a week earlier. I had told her I was coming. She said, "That's nice, Sarah." She didn't say she was excited. She didn't say she missed me. She said, "That's nice." I should have known something was wrong. When I walked up to the house, I noticed something strange. The front porch was covered in garbage bags, black garbage bags, the kind you use for trash. There were about 12 of them. They were stuffed full. They were spilling out onto the steps. I walked up to the porch. I looked at the bags. I recognized the clothes inside. I recognized the fabric of a sweater my grandmother had given me. I recognized the edge of a book I had owned since I was 14. I recognized my own things. I looked at the front door. I opened it. I walked inside. The house was warm. The Christmas tree was up. There were presents under it. My mother was in the kitchen, cooking. The smell of roast chicken filled the air. My father was in the living room, watching TV. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. "Mom," I said, "why are my clothes on the porch?" She didn't turn around. She kept stirring the pot on the stove. She said, "Sarah, we need to talk." I waited. She didn't say anything else. "Mom," I said again, "why are my clothes on the porch?" She finally turned around. She looked at me with the same expression she had worn my whole life, the expression that said I was an inconvenience, the expression that said I was in the way, the expression that said I didn't matter. "Sarah," she said, "you need to understand something. You're an adult now. You don't live here anymore. You're in college. You have your own life. We needed the space." "Space for what?" "For your sister. Tiffany needs the room. Her boyfriend Marcus is living with us now. He needed a place to stay. They needed the space. So we moved your things. You'll figure it out. You always do." I walked to the kitchen. I looked at my mother. I said, "Mom, you put my things on the porch, in garbage bags, in December, in Michigan. It's freezing outside. It's snowing." She shrugged. "They're just things, Sarah. They can be replaced. You can buy new things. It's not a big deal." I looked at my father. He was sitting in his recliner. He had the TV on. He was watching the news. He didn't look at me. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, like he always did. "Dad," I said, "did you know about this?" He looked at the TV. He said, "Sarah, your mother and I talked about it. We decided it was for the best. Tiffany needs support right now. You understand." I said, "No, I don't understand. I don't understand why my things are on the porch in garbage bags. I don't understand why my room isn't my room anymore. I don't understand why no one told me." My mother sighed. She said, "Sarah, you're being dramatic. You always were dramatic. It's just a room. You can stay on the couch for the break. It's not a big deal." I walked to the back of the house. I opened the door to my room. It wasn't my room anymore. The walls were different. The furniture was different. The bed was different. There were clothes in the closet that weren't mine. There were pictures on the wall that I had never seen before. There was a man's jacket on the chair. I walked back to the kitchen. I said, "Mom, Marcus is living in my room?" She nodded. "He's going through a hard time. He lost his job. He needed a place to stay. It's only temporary. I said, I'm going through a hard time. I'm in college. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm exhausted. I needed a place to stay. I needed to come home. She said, Sarah, you're an adult. Adults figure things out. Tiffany needs her boyfriend. That's different. I said, how is that different? My mother didn't answer. She just kept stirring the pot. I slept on the couch that night. It was uncomfortable. It was too small. I couldn't stretch my legs. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m, Marcus came home. He was drunk. He stumbled into the living room. He turned on the lights. He saw me on the couch. He laughed. Oh, it's the college girl, he said. I thought you were coming later. Your mom said you were coming later. I said, my mom said I was coming next week. I told her I was coming today. She must have forgotten. He laughed again. He said, your mom forgets a lot of things, like how to be a decent mother. I said, what do you mean? He sat down on the floor. He leaned against the wall. He said, your mom told me a lot about you. She said you were difficult. She said you were always causing problems. She said you were jealous of Tiffany. She said you couldn't handle the fact that Tiffany had a boyfriend and you didn't. I said, that's not true. He said, I don't care if it's true. That's what she said. That's what she always says. She says you're a liar. She says you make things up. She says you can't be trusted. I got up. I walked to the bathroom. I closed the door. I sat on the floor. I cried. I cried for 20 minutes. I didn't want him to hear me. I didn't want anyone to hear me. I just wanted to go somewhere else. Somewhere safe. Somewhere that wasn't this house. I left the next morning. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't take the garbage bags. I left them on the porch. I walked to the bus station. I bought a ticket back to Ann Arbor. I went back to my dorm room. It was empty. All my friends had gone home. I was alone. I didn't go back to my parents' house for 6 years. Not for Christmas, not for Thanksgiving, not for birthdays, not for any occasion. They called me sometimes. They called to tell me about Marcus. They called to tell me about Tiffany. They called to ask for money. They called to ask for favors. They called to tell me about their problems. They never called to ask about me. They never called to ask how I was doing. One time my mother called. She said, Sarah, your father needs a new car. His old one broke down. He needs help paying for it. Can you help? I said, Mom, I'm a student. I have no money. She said, you're working. You have a job. You can help. You always said you wanted to help us. I said, Mom, I can't help. I'm barely making ends meet. She said, Sarah, you're being selfish. You always were selfish. Your father needs help. Tiffany is too young to work. Marcus can't find a job. You're the only one who can help. You're the only one who has a job. You need to help us. I said, Mom, I don't have the money. I can't help. She said, fine, then don't call us again. We don't need you. We'll figure it out ourselves. I didn't call them again, and they didn't call me. I didn't know about Mrs. Patterson. I didn't know she had been watching. I didn't know she had been recording. Mrs. Patterson was my parents' next-door neighbor. She had lived in the house next door for 40 years. She was 78 years old. She had white hair and a kind face. She was retired. She spent a lot of time in her garden. She had seen everything. She saw me leave that day. She saw me walking to the bus station. She saw the garbage bags on the porch. She saw Marcus moving into my room. She saw my parents pretending I didn't exist. And she started recording. Mrs. Patterson had a small tape recorder. She used it for her memoirs. She was writing a book about her life. She recorded her thoughts every day. But she also recorded other things. She recorded the conversations she overheard from my parents' house. She recorded the things they said about me. She recorded my mother telling the mailman that I had disappeared. She recorded my mother telling the neighbors that I had run away. She recorded my mother telling everyone that I was a difficult child who had abandoned the family. She recorded everything. And when I came back 6 years later, she gave it all to me. I was 26 years old. I had just finished law school. I had a good job. I had a nice apartment. I had built a life for myself. Then my sister called. "Sarah," she said, "Mom and Dad are losing the house. The bank is going to take it. They're going to be homeless. You have to help us. You're the only one who can save us." I said, "Tiffany, I can't help." She said, "Yes, you can. You're a lawyer. You have money. You can give them money. You can help them. They're your parents. You owe them." I said, "Tiffany, I don't owe them anything. They gave away my room. They put my things on the porch. They told everyone I had disappeared. They pretended I didn't exist." She said, "That's not true. They didn't do that. You're remembering things wrong. You always were too sensitive." I said, "I'm not remembering things wrong. I remember everything. I remember the garbage bags. I remember the porch. I remember Marcus living in my room. I remember the bus station. I remember being alone." She said, "Sarah, you need to let go of the past. It's over. It's in the past. They need help now. You can help them. You have to help them. It's not fair to hold grudges." I said, "Tiffany, I'm not holding grudges. I'm holding boundaries. There's a difference." She said, "You're being selfish. You always were selfish. You always thought about yourself first. You never thought about anyone else. You never thought about the family." I said, "Tiffany, I thought about the family for 20 years. I thought about the family while I was sleeping on a couch in a house that didn't want me. I thought about the family while I was working 30 hours a week to pay for college. I thought about the family while I was alone on Christmas because no one wanted me to come home. I stopped thinking about the family when they stopped thinking about me." She hung up. I didn't call her back. 2 weeks later, my parents showed up at my office. I didn't know they were coming. They just appeared at the reception desk. The receptionist buzzed me. She said, "Ms. Mitchell, there are 2 people here to see you. They say they're your parents." I said, "Send them in." They walked in. My mother was wearing a nice dress. My father was wearing a suit. They looked like they were going to a funeral. They sat down across from me. "Sarah," my mother said, "we need to talk." I said, "I've heard that before." She said, "We're losing the house. The bank is going to take it. We have nowhere to go. We need your help. We need you to lend us money. We need you to help us save our home." I said, "Mom, I told you before, I can't help." She said, "You can. You're a lawyer. You have money. You can help your family. This is what family does. You need to help us." My father nodded. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. I opened my desk drawer. I pulled out a folder. I said, "You want to talk about family? Let's talk about family." I opened the folder. I pulled out the first page. It was a copy of the lease agreement my mother had made me sign at 16. "Mom," I said, "do you remember this? You made me sign a lease agreement at 16. You made me pay $400 a month to live in my own room. You made me pay for my own groceries. You made me buy my own clothes. Do you remember that?" She said, "That was different. You needed to learn responsibility." I said, "I needed to learn responsibility, but Tiffany didn't. Tiffany was too delicate. Tiffany needed support. Tiffany needed everything I didn't have." I pulled out the second page. It was a letter from Tiffany. She had sent it to me 2 years ago. It was full of insults. It was full of accusations. It was full of hatred. It was full of everything my sister had been told to believe about me. Tiffany said I was selfish. She said I was bitter. She said I was jealous. She said I was a liar. She said I was a terrible person. Where do you think she learned all that? My mother said, "Sarah, that was years ago. Things have changed. We've all grown. We've all learned. You need to let go of the past. I said, I'm not holding on to the past. The past is holding on to you. You haven't changed. You haven't grown. You're still the same people who put my things on the porch and told me to figure it out. I pulled out the final page. It was a transcript of a recording Mrs. Patterson had made 6 years ago. I said, Mom, do you know who lives next door? She said, What? I said, Mrs. Patterson. She's been your neighbor for 40 years. She heard everything. She recorded everything. She heard you tell the mailman that I had disappeared. She heard you tell the neighbors that I had run away. She heard you tell everyone that I was a difficult child who had abandoned the family. She recorded it all. She gave it to me. I read the transcript aloud. It was my mother's voice. Sarah ran away. She just left one day. She didn't tell us where she was going. She didn't say goodbye. She just left. We were so worried about her. We were so scared. We didn't know what happened. We still don't know what happened. She just disappeared. I looked at my mother. I said, You told everyone I disappeared. You told everyone I ran away. You told everyone I abandoned you. But I didn't. You abandoned me. You put my things on the porch. You gave away my room. You told me I didn't belong there anymore. You made me leave. My mother was silent. She didn't say anything. She couldn't. My father stood up. He was quiet. He said, Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry I let your mother do what she did. I should have done better. I should have been a better father. I should have been better. He walked to the door. My mother followed him. She looked at me one last time. She said, You think you've won, but you haven't. You're still alone. You're still bitter. You're still nothing. I said, You're wrong. I'm not nothing. I'm a survivor. I built a life from nothing. I built it with my own hands. You had nothing to do with it. You gave me nothing, and I still made it. That's not nothing. That's everything. I didn't save my parents' house. I didn't save my sister. I didn't save anyone. They lost the house. They moved into a small apartment. They struggled. They had to work. They had to figure it out for themselves. For the first time in their lives, they had to be responsible. I never heard from them again. If you've ever been the one your family erased, I want you to hear something. You didn't leave them. They left you. You didn't run away. They pushed you away. You didn't disappear. They made you invisible. And the best thing you can do is not go back. You are not a safety net. You are not a bank account. You are not a backup plan. You are a person who deserves to be seen, a person who deserves to be loved, a person who deserves to matter. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 31 years old. I built my own home. I built my own family. I built my own life. And I'm never going back. If this story made you feel something, drop a comment below. Tell me the word that describes what you feel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for listening to mine.